recording this computer. Yeah, it's recording now, and you should be able to see a recording there, all right? And what I will do is I will send that to everybody as soon as we've finished. All right. Okay, now, during the lunch break, I sent you 2 emails. One of them is a Padlet link, which is the Padlet I showed you, which has got every single, day covered, the 2 sessions per day. And you'll have the slides, the official Warwick University slides and their resources, but also, because I always try to bespoke this course as much as I can to the colleagues I'm working with, I always put additional links and things in there as well. All right. So if anything comes up in the discussions that we're going to have on this course moving forward that I think is relevant, that I think would be worth adding in there, then I will add it in there. Okay. So if there's something that you're curious about, which is more about vocational embedding, is more to do with AFL, more to do with questioning, you think that I could give you more information on, then I'll try to find a link. I'll try to find a resource, and then I'll upload it into the Padlet, okay? And the link I gave to you on a previous slide, which is the University of Warwick repository, which is basically the main slides. I mean, that can be used as well. I've given you the password, but essentially that isn't going to have all the bespoke links and resources that I add on as a trainer of, real students in terms of things that come up. And I think that needs to be shared out. If that makes sense? All right. So you've got both options anyway to play around with. And I also sent you an email with regard, some colleagues are not too sure about using Zoom. So there is a very good tutorial, which I got from YouTube. I have to say, half of the people who did the day 5 last Wednesday, when they did it through Zoom, they were not confident about using Zoom. They never used it before. They never had to use it before, but they watched the video. They found it very helpful, and there were no glitches during the actual presentation bit. And because they were working in groups, they also supported each other and did a few dry runs beforehand. So, okay, because if you're on I've got a pro plan Zoom subscription that I can have up to 100 people on at any one time. But if you are registered with Zoom yourself as a user and say you got the free use, you can go on there with more than 2 people, but only you have 40 minutes. So some people have used that in terms of planning things together, all right, to do Zoom, but just keep it to no more than 40 minutes. All right, guys. Okay. Are there any other questions or queries before I do my screen share, and then we then get straight into the content? I think we're all good. I take it that no news is good news. I'll keep an eye on the chat facility. All right then, guys. So we're going to carry on now with session 2, functional skills and real life. We're going to be taking a bit of a deep dive into the criteria for the new specs and how we can begin to apply it. All right. Before we do that, I just want you to just have a little think about your own English learning history. Okay, just very, very briefly, because I find that when we are looking at teaching something, if we can also explore our own personal experience and empathize with some of the issues and the struggles and the challenges of that, then that level of empathy that we engage in can also give us maybe a blueprint, or it could give us some kind of a pipeline or some insight as to how we approach something with our students. I know for me, when my teacher used to reel off grammatical rules and all this meta language and jargon that didn't make any sense, it was never explained properly, I was never really understood why it was mentioned, didn't have any connection with any of the exams I had to prepare for. I didn't understand if it was the teacher's prerogative, that's how they were trained. But I've got quite mixed experiences of English language teaching myself. And I have to say, and this gives you some indication of my own schooling, that and also why I went into FE in post-16, was I became the teacher, the English teacher I never had. So I don't know whether that resonates with people, but I felt that, because I operated from a deficit model in my schooling, I felt that I had poor schooling. I didn't really, wasn't necessarily inspired. It wasn't really kind of, experience. I think, well, I learned a lot there because I learned what I could, but I felt that more could have been done. But that was part of my life history, and I learned from that. And I realized it was a deficit model, but I was going to make sure that if I was going to, work within the sector, I was going to work with students, work with teachers, then at least my kind of negative experiences of learning English and education in general from my earlier days was not going to be the blueprint of how I was going to teach my learners or train teachers moving forward. So for me, it's about learning from a deficit model. So here, you may want to recall classrooms, your teachers, their methods, fellow pupils, attitudes, their feelings, their attitudes, etc. Also, learning outside the classroom, was that actively encouraged for you? Also, learning in the workplace, hobbies and interests, any positive. So does anybody want to share in the chat any positive or negative experiences of learning English or English classes? I do have to say, one thing that was hugely positive was there was one in one of my years, I think it was when I was in year 9 or 10, and I only had her for a year, but she was a brilliant English teacher. And I asked her quite straight up, I said, Mrs. Sherratt, can you tell me how I can improve my English? She said, Sunil, you must read. You must read more widely and broadly. And she was so right. I love reading. Reading has huge reciprocal power, for teaching and learning. And so that was a key thing for me. Okay, so I'm giving you a negative and a positive. So does anybody want to share anything in terms of their own kind of journey in learning English? Anything you want to share? Anybody? Okay. Yeah, good, very good. Yeah, that's so important, isn't it, Shirley? That respect for the teacher, and this comes into neurolinguistic programming territory, establishing a rapport, pacing and leading. These are really powerful NLP techniques that really people in a teaching, coaching position really need to be aware of that, because that can be a make or break. And I have to say, from my own experience, and also listening to lots of learners, unfortunately, it's been the poor quality interaction in the classroom or the lack of respect sometimes the teacher would have for the pupils, or low expectations of the pupils of the teacher, actually did a lot of damage to the interaction. And what I'm a big proponent of, is making sure that you work on your interaction with your learners and make sure that you build that rapport, pace and lead accordingly, build that respect and rapport. And then you can engage, once you engage them at that level, that human level, you can take them anywhere. Thank you for sharing, Joe. Past Jesus, no idea. However, told me I could do. I got a job. Very good. Excellent. Yeah, I have to say, Joe, lots of colleagues I know that their entry into post 16 has been because it's not been straightforward. Okay. But what's very heartening for me moving forward is that my brilliant experience as a practitioner in post 16 are used to teach corporates on how they can work with their employees, how heads of department in top private schools can engage with their pupils, okay, in English classes. So really, there's all sorts of wonderful things that you could do. Good. Some of you remarking on some wonderful teaching that you've had, poor teaching and the impact of that. Yes, I have to say my schooling was very tough indeed. But then again, I learned that what was presented to me was a deficit model. That there's a name. Sometimes you only realize afterward there's a name for it. Okay. And for me, my poor schooling was a deficit model. And I quickly learned from that. And now I turn it into a strength. Fantastic. Yeah. And teachers maintaining high standards. Some great commentary here, guys. This is brilliant. This is really, really powerful stuff. Yeah, brilliant stuff, Shirley. Well done. Thank you, Siobhan. Thanks, Josh. Thank you so much, Joe. That's amazing. Thank you. That's really good feedback. Thank you. And so, for me, talking to you in this moment as an English language practitioner and trainer, yes, I do have a history, and I'm proud of it, whatever it was, good, bad, and ugly. But I'll tell you one thing, if it wasn't positive, I learned from that and why it didn't work, okay? Other examples of poor teaching, and when because I had to, after my schooling, I had to go to post 16 because I didn't get the necessary A-level grades to go into my first choice uni. So I had to take a year out. And in a college, in a local college, and I was learning, it wasn't English, it was economics. bless him. What he would do, he wouldn't even say hello to anybody. He'd come in, and then in those days, 1988, it was all blackboard and chalk and talk. Well, in this case, there was no talking. He would come in, open his book, and then he would then write all the notes on there. He wouldn't even give us any instruction that we had to do. It's just, you either want to write it down or not. And that was it. I thought, oh my God, what is going on here? So obviously my only choice was to write the notes down, then read them afterwards and talk to my other student colleagues about it. But there was no interaction. I don't know whether in those days Ofsted didn't exist or something, but you know, I learned from that. I learned from that gentleman that maybe sometimes dictating might help. Maybe sometimes getting students to copy off the board occasionally is not a bad thing in terms of processing, but doing it throughout the whole year was not good. But yeah, you know, I can recall these things, and I know when I've had brilliant teachers, you know, sometimes my brilliant teachers have come out in my sort of post-uni courses, you know, doing professional training courses where you've got people who know their stuff back to front, and they're able to engage with the delegates, and then they're able to then really transfer their own practice across for others to resonate with other people. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Zabia. Thank you for that. That's really good feedback as well. Inspiration, you know, we teach English, but can we also teach for inspiration as well? These kind of subtleties we're going to be looking at on this, because it's not, for me, it's not all about transferring that curriculum across using methodology and resources. We have to get into a level deeper in terms of exploring the interaction, the rapport with our learners, and that will require them understanding where you are coming from and where they are coming from. And as I said to you before, teaching is becoming more challenging now compared to the last 5-10 years, because teachers in post-16 invariably, because of the nature of the sector and the nature of the learners that the sector attracts, that we are going to be dealing with learners with a range of needs, not just learning needs, but mental health needs and emotional well-being needs as well. And we have to factor all those in, absolutely. Because you're probably aware that there is, you know, every single school and college, they have to work within the 8 principles around mental health that has come from the DFE, from in association with lots of mental health charities who work as a collaboration, that have, in terms of safeguarding mental health and emotional well-being, all practitioners need to be aware of this and adjust their teaching and interaction accordingly. And that's really, really important. So it's really important, guys, that you also trace your own river. I mean, I'll show you an example of what I mean. I've got a diagram here. No, okay, all right. It's not showing, right. Sorry, I'm gonna have to come out of this and show you an example of a mirror. The river, let's have a look. No. Okay, sorry. There was a diagram of a river. It's called the Rivers of Writing. Essentially, what you have to do is you have to draw a river, and then what you have to do then is just write on that, you know, your own journey in terms of things that worked well, what didn't work with your speaking and listening development, your reading development, your writing development, and you try to get learners to do the same as well. Okay, and I'm just going to just make sure I can share my screen with everybody. Just go back. Okay, because I will, there is a document that shows a river and commentary around the river, and it just really is fantastic in showing someone's journey. Okay, and it's something that, you know, would you consider delving into your learners' English learning history, like the way I've divulged, like the way you've divulged? Do you see any benefit in maybe doing something similar with your students, maybe in the induction stage? Yes or no? Tell me in the chat box how you feel about that. Would you be using this as a strategy to get to know your learners? What has made them tick in the past? What hasn't made them tick? Okay, we're getting some comments. Thank you, Paula, for sharing that. Thank you. Appreciate, respect that totally. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Introduction lesson where they get to. Yeah, fantastic. Lovely. The introductory part is extremely powerful. Okay. Has anybody heard of using the literacy clock? Yes or no? Have any of you heard of using the literacy clock? I'm sure I have a link. I'm sure I have a link in the Padlet. Okay. Now, if you can imagine giving your students an A4 piece of paper, say during induction, and it's got a typical, analog clock, like a clock face, like 12, showing the numbers, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then what you do, you encourage your learners to use concentric circles around the clock. So the first concentric circle going by the hour when they use speaking and listening skills, the second concentric circle when they use writing skills, the third one when they use writing skills. And if you can, and this came from some FE research that was done about 12, 15 years ago. There should be a video link to a YouTube video that goes into this research project, and which talks about how practitioners used the literacy clock to find out what naturally occurring literacies were going on in the students' own personal lives. Because the more as teachers we can tap into that they read this article in this Facebook thing, or they're in that, or they're in this book club, or they're, you'll learn a lot from your students as to how they use speaking, listening, reading, and writing. You may be surprised to hear that some of them may chair community volunteering meetings. Brilliant. Isn't that the kind of thing for their functional skills level 1, level 2 that they'll have to do for their speaking and listening? So you'll be able to get some real golden nuggets, okay? Yeah, thank you, Joe. Clock for revision for exam questions in L2 reading, amazing. And the way I like to use the clock, yeah, I use it for induction. I use what they're telling me, and I choose my own appropriate topics and themes. Because as long as the topics and themes are appropriate to functional skills, then I will create my own. I'm a big believer in creating for the student, creating resources, adapting my resources so it taps into what they're interested in and what will work for them. And what I tend to find is for them to engage from the literacy clock to the exam, I may give them snippets of the new standards and say, well, can you see any links between, because you're saying here that you like looking at pictures in like sports magazines, and you can infer a lot from that. Well, did you know that the level 1 criteria is about inferring, getting inferential meaning from an image? And so what I like to do is get my students to physically make the connections between the functional skills criteria and their own naturally occurring literacies to get engagement. And then they can see, right. Now, if you can do that, you might then, the learners may come.
I'm on a course, Fred.
Hello? Sorry, I don't know what was that. Sorry, if you can keep yourselves on mute, unless you wanted to ask a question about the content, that's fine. All right. But what I like to do is get my learners to be able to make connections between the criteria and their literacy, which is what they use all the time. And I want them to tell me, Sunil, I think I've already got 50, 60% knowledge towards the functional skills level 1. Brilliant, fantastic. That's really supportive and encouraging. And it will build on their growth mindset, because it allows them to confirm what they already know, and you can praise them wisely for it as well. So there's huge benefits, guys, but look out for the literacy clock in the Padlet. Okay, that's really important. And what I will make sure that you've got the Rivers of Writing handout, which allows another way of trying to get your learners to kind of engage, okay? And also the barriers to engaging with English, okay? Now, this has come from some research from Adult Participation in Learning Survey that was done in 2017, but published in 2018. And it was done through the DFE. And it's saying here that the biggest barrier, when you look at that triangle, is low self-confidence. This came out of some research. Followed by that is lack of perceived relevance to employment or real-life context. The reason why, that's the second biggest reason why learners did not engage in both Can I also mention here, guys, not just functional skills, but GCSE. And I don't know whether we have any GCSE colleagues. That's fine, Vicky, no problem. So I don't know if we have any GCSE colleagues in the house, but, you know, trying to get them to engage in 19th century text when they don't understand a word of it, or they don't understand the reason why they have to do it. And even some teachers are questioning why they have to get this taught for their students. What I always do is I always try to use transferable skills, transformation skills, to be able to link it with an up-to-date theme, try to make a very interesting activity with it. Say if it was about two people talking, I'll try and convert it into a chat show. I try to do all sorts of things to be able to get them to engage with, you know, with a 19th century piece of text. And always try to build transferability. I will always try to get my learners, if they're looking at 19th century text, what skills they've been using and how they're beneficial for their employment, for their other courses as well. And in functional skills, there's great opportunity to do this. And there's more opportunities because lots of the themes are linked to life and work anyway, and we have to make it relevant. And then they're saying the least barrier is, you know, the third one is previous negative experiences at school. Okay. Now, this may vary from person to person. Somebody may say, oh no, my biggest barrier was previous negative experiences. And then it was low self-confidence. But can you just tell me, guys, do you tell me about you, if you're able to, you know, without divulging too much personally, if you don't want to, but where do you stand in terms of maybe some of the barriers that you've had with learning English? Would you agree with that? Or you can talk about your learners if you want. You can say, well, yes, my learners actually conform to this diagram. So tell me, just give me some comments based on this, just to see where we're all at. You know, what are the biggest barriers? I think sometimes teachers need to know what the barriers are before we can then plan the teaching. And I found that working in prison, the biggest mistake I made, my first day of teaching in prison, I mean, I worked for 5 years, but first day was terrible. I went in there with all my resources, my little trolley with all my boxes of cards here, there, and everywhere. Here are my objectives and slides. And the guys did not like it at all. You know, who is this person coming in there? He hasn't even bothered to, you know, build a rapport. And I quickly learned I had to build a rapport. And there's so much baggage about learning that there was me thinking I was doing a professional job. But it didn't cut it with them. So I had to strip it all back and go to things like barriers, then get the engagement. So we're getting some comments coming through. Lack of confidence. Yeah, being afraid not to get it wrong. That's so true. My learners have all those barriers. Yeah, and language on top. They conform to that 100%. Thank you, Josh, for sharing that. Anxiety. Yeah, absolutely. That's all these things here. Again, we have something called the growth zone model. And I'll try to get a copy of that for you. Again, based on research, imagine 3 concentric circles. Middle one is comfort. The next one is growth. And the one on the outer is anxiety. So we have to make sure unwittingly what we teach them is not getting them into the anxious zone or doesn't keep them too much in the growth, okay? In the comfort rather. We want to get them to the growth zone as much as possible. Now, somebody has mentioned in the chat, let's have a look. They're afraid to get it wrong. Honestly, the number of times I've heard that, yes, they're afraid to get it wrong. Now, has anybody heard of Funk's questions? Funk's questions. I'll write it in there. I'll write it in the chat box. Anybody heard of this? Funk's questions, really powerful because Funk's questions are basically like multiple choice type questions, but you're framing them verbally, okay? So you could say, well, you know, what is the, you know, why do we use punctuation mark? You know, why do we use a question mark? You know, why is a question mark being used in the text? Because At level 1, they have to show the roller punctuation. So you can say A, it's about putting an end to a sentence. B, to show surprise. Or is it 3, to make an inquiry? Okay. So what you're doing there is you're giving them 3 options with the knowledge and the satisfaction that one of them is correct. Okay. So it's about presenting verbally in your discourse with the learners options. And by doing that, they have the safety and security of knowing the answer's there, but then you're getting their subconscious mind to work in the growth zone because you're asking them to reason with the other options and rule out all of the distractors. I'm very careful in asking open questions to learners because some of them, they don't want to say it. They don't want to make themselves look silly. But I tend to find Funk's questions and targeting students, Joe, what do you think? Is it A, B, or C? Or even presenting the questions on the slide really works a treat. It gets everybody involved and engaged. And again, if some of you use clickers, do any of you use clickers? Which is like, it's a bit like getting your learners to like flash something that looks like a QRC code, but in a card format, and they have to then turn the card. Is it A, B, C, or D? And then you capture the findings on your mobile, then the answers come up. A bit like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire poll. Really good. So you've got that one as well. So you've got clickers. And what I will do, guys, I'm just making a note now. I will put some links so you can register for free and you can use. All these things are really good for engaging and getting them involved so nobody misses out and nobody, no, I mean, really, everybody in the classroom, they do need to get out of the comfort zone slowly. And this is how we can orchestrate that movement as practitioners by doing the things that I'm suggesting. Thank you for your feedback. Some of you saying you're using clickers. It's really nice and fun. It adds a different vibe to your session, away from worksheets and handouts. Somebody saying here, one of the biggest barriers I find, students sometimes don't think we understand where they're coming from. In the past work with young offenders, they gave me reality check. Yes, tell me about it, Siobhan. The first day I taught in prison, boy, oh boy, did I get a reality check about teaching and learning. I had to go back to basics, I really did. But you know what? I became a much more effective teacher and promoter of learning as a result of it. You know, I learned a lot from my students as well. And in the end, after a rocky first 2 weeks in prison, I soon got into my mojo and it worked out absolutely fine. And we all go through these ups and downs in teaching as well. And it's all about getting on board new ideas. All right, guys, I'll make sure Plickers is on there. Okay, now with fixed and growth mindsets, we don't have time to watch the video, but has anybody heard of Carol Dweck, famous New York professor who's done lots of work on growth mindset development? Very instrumental. We haven't got time to watch the video, but there's a link here for you to look into it. I personally, if I just show you this slide, I believe, for me, and I'm talking to you, walking the talk as a post-16 practitioner now, working with learners, is that I embed growth mindset principles in the way that I communicate with my learners, because that's another powerhouse that can be exposed to, as well as your methodology, as well as the actual tech, well, the resources, as well as using the student. You can also, through the power of your own speech, you can also promote learning and put them in the growth zone. So Carol Dweck said that, the video is fantastic. It's a YouTube TED Talk. It's a brilliant, brilliant TED Talk. I don't know whether you guys watch TED Talks. I love watching them. I mean, I'm actually going to do a podcast with somebody who's a very good TEDx speaker for my mental health work that I do. And so it's a brilliant repository of learning, and I watch them regularly. And the video is basically Carol, about 10, 12 years ago, doing an excellent TED Talk on growth mindset. And she's saying that intelligence can be developed. She calls it a human right. It's a basic human right for people's intelligences to be developed, and it can be grown, okay, rather than it being static. So she's saying we need to be aware of the differences between fixed mindset and growth mindset. So in my utterances and questioning of students, I always try to make sure I get them to embrace challenge, to keep persisting. So using concept checking questions, hinge point questions as well, where I just check on their learning by asking a short question before we move on, bit of a mastery approach, that they see their effort is not, you know, it's not just to pass your exam. These skills, X, Y, and Z, are going to help you with the job that you want to do, because post 16 is a springboard to higher level training or apprenticeships or HE, or to get you into a job or a training or something, or, you know, working for an institution, working for an organization like the army, for example. Okay. So as an English teacher in the modern context, 2020 new specs, with the learners that I have to be out of a strategic mind. My mind is very strategic when I'm teaching my learners, when I am talking to them. So all these things are weaved into my questioning and utterances, so I get them to operate in the growth mindset. I don't call it growth mindset with my students. I operate within the paradigm, and I use it to fuel my teaching of the learners, particularly through the interaction. Particularly where, unfortunately, with lots of learners, it's the interaction with previous teaching, either way, that may have unwittingly done the damage that we're having to now sort out and deal with. Lots of catching up, okay? So the more we can move them in our questioning to do this, we can do that. Now, I don't have an example of developing in growth mindset with English teaching, but I do have an example of a dialogue that I wrote for a maths training course, for a GCSE maths training course, where I applied the growth mindset principles. Now, I'm just asking you all, because I know you're all English teachers, would some of you like to see that, that conversation, that dialogue, which is for maths, but you could apply it to English? Would that be of any interest? I won't put it in there because it is maths orientated, but at least it's a demonstration of the growth mindset in the conversation, the things I'm talking about. You're getting a yes. Okay. All right, guys. Yeah. All right. Okay. Brilliant, Zubir. You teach maths as well. I know lots of practitioners on multimodality, that they cover different subjects. All right. Okay, guys. Now, obviously, the conversation that I developed is around teaching of an AQA GCSE Maths Foundation question, but it's essentially trying to get them to understand symmetry. But what you need to notice is how me as a teacher, how I'm asking the questions, how I'm keeping them in check, how I'm using a range of different questioning techniques to keep them in check. And what I've done is deliberately, I've created a learner. But can I please ask, I'm going to have to turn the audio off with some of you because I can hear background noises. So I'm sorry about this. I'm just going to have to turn the background. Sorry about that. Okay. Right. Thank you. Fantastic. So I think you'll find that exceptionally useful. But like I said, you can adapt it. You can adapt it for your students. All right. Okay. Moving on, guys. So growth mindset development. Please watch the video. Now we're coming on to the functional skills. Now think, and again, I don't know how long, guys, you've been in post 16. You may want to, I mean, I've given you my age. My post 16 age is 27. Even though I feel younger, but there you go. Yeah, you can tell me how long you've been teaching so I can get some idea. Are you pre-2010, post-2010? So if you want to add the years, you can. But here is a very brief history. With 2004, functional skills were specified as part of the 14 to 19 reform as key aspect of core learning for young people. That was a significant reform that included 14s. Now, can I ask everybody, are some of you, oh gosh, you very experienced group, 20 years, 21 years, 17. Oh my God, my goodness me. Fantastic, guys. My goodness me, Well done. Fair play to you all, fair play. Fantastic. So some of you will know, you'll know about the 14 to 19 reforms. They were very, very significant. Can I ask, do any of you teach pre-16s? Are any of you 14 to 16s? because we do need to be aware of some of the approaches and methodologies of 14 to 16s, as opposed to your 16 pluses and then your adults. Okay, oh, all right, fantastic. Yes, but not English. Okay, thanks, Dorette. Amazing, okay? Because again, we do need to be mindful of the ages of our students, because one thing I want to mention is the development of their minds, and also the development of their pragmatic knowledge. What I mean by pragmatic knowledge is their world knowledge, okay? So purely because of their age, okay? So this is something to be very, very mindful of. And also certain themes and topics they may well not have been exposed to by virtue of their age, okay? And that's just something to bear in mind when you are selecting topics, or you're trying to activate their schemata, which is their pragmatic knowledge, their knowledge of the world. Now, how I activate people's schemata at the start of a lesson is, if I'm doing reading comprehension, I do not show the text. I engage in a discussion about the theme, give them a quiz, we show them a video, we do some matching exercises, anagrams of keywords that will be picked up in a text later on to engage their schemata, their schematic activation, their activation of their pragmatic knowledge. Very important for the younger learners. Okay, anyway, I digress. That was 2004. 2007, first set of functional skills standards were put into place. And then after that, you then had replacement of key skills, skills for life qualifications in 2012. 2015 was an ETF review, found that functional skills are benefiting learners in acquiring skills valued by employers. So therefore, it was going to continue. But then there'd be an opportunity to actually do a refresh. 2007 was a national consultation. Can you give me a yes or a no? Were any of you involved in commenting as part of a national consultation exercise across the whole nation? Were some of you involved in giving your own personal feedback to the DFE on the 2010? Yes or no? Okay, some of you yes, some of you no. Yeah, now I did actually make lots of comments, and I'm sorry to say, maybe the reforms are my fault, because lots of things that I said they needed to do, they've done it. Yes, blame me, it's all my fault. Okay, guys, so 2018 is the functional skills subject content, which has got all of the new content. We're going to do a quiz very shortly, so as to make sure we're all up to speed with some of the changes compared to 2010. Can you please, in terms of teaching phonics, but we'll cover this in day 3, I believe, is do have a look at the phonics word lists at the back of this booklet. This booklet is actually in the Padlet. Okay, this is a very, very important part of the subject content, okay? But we'll go more into the phonics side in day 3. And then from 2019, this was September 2019, when the first registrations could be done and the first teaching could start. Okay, everybody. So what we're going to do now is go through a quiz. So just put A or B, or I'll give you the instructions, and then write it in the chat box. I've got the chat box open. 15 questions, quick fire, and then we're going to have a discussion afterwards. Okay, right. A or B, at entry level 1, speaking and listening, is saying the names of the alphabet A, new content, or B, legacy content? Can you type A or B, please? Let me look at your answers. Got some A's, we've got B's. Okay. Let's have a look. That's the A's. Thank you. Thanks, Liz. Brilliant. Okay, fantastic. Right, it's new content. Okay. So as part of entry level 1, speaking and listening, they've got to say the names of the alphabet. Okay. Number 2, for entry 1, we'll have a little discussion about the implications in a short while, but let's just do the quiz. Entry 1 writing. Do candidates need to use lower and uppercase letters in sequence for entry 1 writing? A, yes. B, no. No worries, Joe, but do you want to just give a guess? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. Lovely. Very good. Very good. Thank you, guys. The answer is yes. Okay. So it's now really important now that learners draw a distinction between lower and uppercase letters. And I tend to find that lots of second language speakers, if some of you are teaching entry, that depending on their language, they may not be able to, their language does not draw a distinction between the different letters. Like we have capital letters and small letters, okay, for different reasons, for, you know, starting a sentence, to be able to use proper nouns, for example. Okay, so that's that one. Number 3, entry 1 writing. Do candidates need to use capitalization for I and proper nouns, like names of names, names of cities, towns, or technical jargon? Okay, getting some yes, well done. That's an A. Number 4, for entry 2 reading, do candidates need to just read simple sentences with one clause? Just one clause, no conjunctions, no compounds or complexes. A, yes, B, no. Okay, thank you guys. Thank you very much. I'm just going to now just one thing. Right, the answer is no. We've got to now make sure for entry level 2, sorry, oh, I think I've just flipped the screen there. So now for entry level 2, students need to now be reading text. So this is your selection of text is going to be critical here, that actually use conjunctions like, you know, and because, that join 2 clauses or 2 parts of a sentence together. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that we do not still expose them to simple sentences, but there has to be a careful balance, that we are introducing them, and students have an understanding that sentences can convey 2 concepts in one sentence. Okay. But some of them may be thinking, when I want to say 2 concepts, I must use 2 sentences. So they have to realign their understanding there for entry level 2. Moving on, number 5. Will candidates be asked to use adjectives, descriptive words, and linking words, signposting words in their writing at entry 2? A, yes, B, no. This is entry 2 writing. So you can probably see how the quiz is going. We're starting from E1, then we'll end up in level 2 for question 15. Okay, thank you for the answers. Yep, the answer is yes. So yes, get them to use word partnerships between adjectives and nouns. So, you know, really good, strong collocations, words that are high frequency partnerships. They go together. That adds to the vocabulary. And linking words, signpost words that help to add information, provide additional information, maybe show a little bit of contrast, you know, get them to link. The linking is now really important now, part of entry 2, to show more cohesiveness in their writing. Okay. Number 6, at entry 2, will candidates be expected to identify the purpose of different texts, like instructions, messages, letters, and etc.? A, yes, B, no. Okay, right, the answer is no, everybody. Okay, for their, right, this is an important point here. For their exam at entry 3, they will be expected. But if you're teaching, if you're trying to teach the entry 2 progressively, and you want to pipeline some entry 3 stuff, or you're teaching a mixed ability class and you can't avoid this because you've got E3s in your class, then do teach it. But then the assessment is not expected of them for the exam. However, there's no harm in teaching it, if that makes sense. Okay. Next question. Entry 2, will candidates be expected to identify the purpose of different, oh, I've done this one, haven't I? Sorry, I do apologize. What's going on there? At entry 3, candidates will be expected to write words with complex phonics like knowledge, occasion, borough, qualification, measure. A, yes, B, no. This is entry level 3. Okay, right, okay. Interesting, got a mix of responses there. The answer is yes, okay? If you look, now these words, guys, they've been directly taken from the DFE subject content book, the appendix at the end, as I mentioned before, which has your listing of words that students are expected to read and write, spell, for their functional skills, new specifications. Because you probably are aware that the new specs writing exam, there is an element, that there is a spelling test element. And this is really from learning from practice from Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2, the primary school kids need to learn their spellings by learning the phonics, okay? So this is to stop students writing knowledge with a J, or writing occasion with an SH, okay? Or writing qualification with a K. These are the things where the phonics is going to be really critical, but we're going to go into it more detail in probably session, I think it's day 3, probably Friday. Yes, thank you for pointing that out. Thank you, Joe. I'm so glad we've got the grammar police in the house. Yeah, I didn't want to say it, but yeah, I did write it twice. I think what I should have done was probably write occasional, the other one. Thank you very much. Thank you. At entry level 3, candidates are now expected to use headings and bullets to structure their writing. A, true, B, false. So what's your thoughts on that, guys? Okay, we're getting mostly A's, okay? The answer is true, okay? So really, entry level 3 students, they need to get into the habit of understanding structural aspects of writing, and headings and bullets are really good for doing that. What I like to do is with entry 3s is give them unsegmented text. So it doesn't have any paragraphs. It's all lumped together, no titles. Then depending on the stress and challenge that I want to employ in the class, I will then give them some titles, or say, you've got to put a title somewhere. What title would it be? Or let me give you the title. If you know they're going to struggle with that, get them to move things around. Sometimes I do it as a word processing exercise. So they have to actually use some of the editing functions on Microsoft Word to be able to segment it and put the different structural bits in there, like bullet points or numbers or whatever it might be. All right, for number 9, entry 3 reading, candidates are now expected to distinguish between fact and opinion in a text. True or false? A, true, B, false. Okay, right. Now, this is actually false, okay? It is a new requirement for level 1 to be able to distinguish between fact and opinion. However, you know, teaching entry 3 progressively to prepare them for level 1, there's no harm teaching it, but they're not going to be assessed on it. So it's important to draw a distinction between the teaching element and the promotion of learning element and the assessment element as well. Okay, fantastic. So obviously, when it comes to your assessment training, you will be making sure the level 1s do that, and level entry 3s do something else. Number 10, at level 1, inferred meanings from images has been transferred from the legacy level 2. A, true, B, false. Okay, right, so this one is actually true, okay? So here, we're trying to assess the student's suggestibility when they are given a picture. We can either get them to state the obvious, which is explicit meaning, or what does this image suggest? And this is the difference that we need to be getting across to our student. 11, for level 1 writing, candidates are now expected to use complex sentences similar to legacy level 2. True or false? A or B? I love complex sentences. I'm a terrible English teacher, I am. Right, the answer is true. So, you know, yes, compounds are good, but at level 1, they're expecting complex, okay? So things like, you know, starting your sentence with although, or using if as a conditional clause, all right? So now I have produced some teaching materials for another training course on writing, level 1 learners to write complex sentences, and entry 3s knowing how to write how to identify the purpose of the text. Would you like those teaching notes? They're teaching notes that you might help you to create resources and might help you to plan lessons. Would you find those useful? Yeah, okay. Okay, again, they are not in the Warwick University repository. These are things that because I'm a developer as well, I produce resources for other things. So yeah, okay, no problem, guys. I will make sure I'm making a list of things to add in the Padlet. All right. Number 12, for level 1 reading, candidates will be expected to demonstrate the role of punctuation in understanding text. A, true, B, false. Coming towards the end now. Oh, I think a resounding A from everybody. Yeah, well done. That is true. So again, you may want to use thunk style questioning to make sure they understand the role of the punctuation. That's normally a good exercise to do. But we will be doing some deep diving in the SPAG as well on this course. So that will open up, you know, some other ideas for you. Number 14, compared to legacy level 2 writing, the SPAG requirements are more demanding in the reform qualifications. A, true, B, false. Okay, great, fantastic. Now in the legacy, it made up 40% of the marks, the SPAG. Now it's 42. So even though there's more marks available for SPAG, because the DFE want people to be able to become more, you know, have a more of a masterful approach around SPAG, but they still need to get the composition bit sorted as well. And for E2 to entry, E1 to entry 3, they've got the spelling test as well to do on top. Last question. For reading level 2, candidates are not expected to identify different styles of writing and writer's voice. A, true, B, false. Okay, the answer is false. Okay, they're not expected is false, which means they are expected. Okay, they are expected to understand different styles of writing, genre, and writer's voice, passive and active. Now, some of these things transcend from GCSE. And I think one of the things that the DFE want people to do is, and this was missing in the legacy, is lots of level 2s, functional skills, they get told they have to do GCSE to get into a job. Oh, do excuse me, sorry. Sorry about that. The ice cream van has just come. Sorry about that. You can tell I'm home based. Well, there you go. So they will be expected to understand that, and that's come from GCSE. So again, if some of your learners are going to do GCSE anyway, then this is going to be really good information for them as well. Okay, guys, I think a short break is in order. All right, let's have a short comfort break, and can we come back, please, in 5 minutes? Okay, thanks, guys. 5 minutes. Okay, everybody, welcome back. Just finished the comfort break, so thank you very much. So we're now going to carry on until 2 p.m. So let me just find my slide so I know where I am. Just give me a moment. Okay, here we go. Right, okay, right. So we just finished that quiz. Okay, so just something else I just wanted to mention here as well. There we go. Okay, right. So English teachers. So again, what I'd like you to do, guys, can you write through what we're going to do? We're going to go through 1, 2, 3, 7 statements. Can you write on a piece of paper somewhere, number 1, true or false? Just put true or false against each one. So number 1, English teachers will need to learn the International Phonemic Alphabet in order to teach spelling. So can you write somewhere true or false? I mean, you can put it in the chat box if you like, not a problem. Or you can write on a piece of paper. Okay. Number 2, there are spelling tests at all levels in the new functional skills. Let's keep a check on the chat. Okay, so what are your thoughts there? True or false? There are spelling tests at all levels in the new functional skills. Number 3, there is less of emphasis on spelling, punctuation, and grammar in the new functional skills. Is that true or false? There's less emphasis. Okay, number 4, a lot of content from level 1 has been moved to entry level 3 to close the gap in levels. True or false? Okay, number 5, there is no longer a requirement to cover persuasive writing in level 2 English assessments. True or false? Number 6, there is more emphasis on fact and opinion at level 1 than there was previously. True or false? And number 7, there will be no access to spelling and grammar checks in the writing components in English. True or false? Okay, right. I'm just going to stop the share. I just need to find a document.